The silent plea. The crystal spires of Nylar Prime sparkled under the light of 3 moons, their translucent surfaces reflecting a rainbow of colors across the sprawling cities below. For 10,000 years, the Nylari had built their civilization in harmony with their lush world, creating a society that prized knowledge, art, and peaceful cooperation above all else. Their slender bodies, with iridescent skin that shifted colors with their emotions, moved gracefully through floating gardens and living architecture that breathed with the planet itself. Arella, chief communicator of the central spire, stood on her balcony watching the evening ritual of light singing, where thousands of her people gathered in the valley to create patterns of bioluminescence that pulsed in mesmerizing harmony. Their bodies glowed in synchronization, telling ancient stories of creation and hope through light and movement. This was the way of the Nylari: communication through beauty, understanding through shared art. The delegations from the Centauri systems have confirmed their arrival for tomorrow's knowledge exchange, said Terrian, her assistant, joining her on the balcony. His skin rippled with blue excitement. They bring new agricultural techniques that could increase our harvest yields by 30%. Arella's skin shimmered with pleased violet. Excellent. Prepare the grand hall for thee. The sky turned white. Not the gentle white of morning, but a searing, painful brightness that cast no shadows. For 3 heartbeats, the world was silent, frozen in that terrible light. Then came the sound, a roar so profound it seemed to shake the planet to its core. The first spire fell before anyone could scream, shattering into 1,000,000 glittering fragments that rained down on the light singers below. Then another and another, until the horizon was filled with falling towers and rising smoke. What's happening? Tyrian's skin had gone ash-gray with terror, all color drained from his normally vibrant form. Arella couldn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the sky, where massive ships, angular and black as obsidian, had appeared from nowhere. They weren't like any vessels she recognized from the 17 allied species the Nylari traded with. These had no markings, no identifying features, just brutal, efficient shapes designed for one purpose: war. The Nylari had no military, no defenses beyond basic shields for weather protection. Why would they? In 10 millennia of spacefaring history, they had never encountered a species that didn't eventually respond to diplomacy, art, and the mutual benefits of peaceful exchange. "Central Command," she whispered, grabbing Tyrion's arm. "We need to get to Central Command." They ran through corridors already filled with panicking Nylari, their skin flashing in alarm patterns. Through windows, Arella could see more ships descending, smaller craft now, dropping toward the city centers with mechanical precision. The Central Command chamber was in chaos when they arrived. Council members with skin cycling through fear patterns stood around the communication array, desperately sending messages to their allies. "No response from the Centauri," said Elder Malin, his age-whitened skin now tinged with desperate red. "The Proxima Collective isn't answering either." "The Galactic Assembly?" Arella asked, taking her position at the main communication console. "Nothing." Elder Malin's voice cracked. "It's as if all channels are being blocked simultaneously." Through the command center's dome, they watched as the invaders' smaller craft landed in the city squares. Ramps extended, and from them emerged figures that moved with cold efficiency, bipedal but heavily armored, faceless behind black helmets. They carried weapons that pulsed with energy unlike anything in known space. The slaughter began without warning, without demands, without any attempt at communication. The invaders moved through the city methodically, their weapons reducing Nylari to ash with single shots. "They're jamming all standard frequencies," said Terrian, his fingers dancing across the emergency systems. "I can't get any signal out." A distant explosion shook the command center, sending cracks spiderwebbing across the dome overhead. "The Starheart," Elder Malon whispered, his eyes wide. "We must use the Starheart." The room went silent despite the chaos outside. The Starheart was ancient technology, forbidden except in civilization-ending catastrophe. Created by their ancestors during the cosmic dark age, it was a communication method of last resort, one that broadcast not just data but emotion, consciousness, the very essence of a people's desperation. Is this truly the end? Arella asked, looking at the elder. A section of the city disappeared in a flash of light so bright it left afterimages on her retinas. The answer was clear. Activate the deep chambers, Elder Malon commanded. We go to the heart, deep beneath the central spire, past layers of crystal and living stone. The emergency council descended into a chamber that hadn't been opened since it was sealed 5,000 years ago. At its center sat a device that defied conventional description. A swirling nexus of energy contained within a crystalline structure that seemed to bend reality around it. The star heart can send a message beyond any jamming technology, Elder Malon explained as technicians rushed to activate ancient systems. But it requires sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice? Arella asked, though part of her already knew. Consciousness, memory, experience. The elder's voice was solemn. The message carries the emotional truth of our people. To send it, someone must connect directly with the heart. Another explosion, closer now. Dust fell from the ancient ceiling. I'll do it, Arella said before she could reconsider. As chief communicator, it was her duty, her calling to ensure the Nylari voice was heard. The process was quick but not painless. As Arella placed her hands on the crystalline matrix, tendrils of energy wrapped around her arms, sinking beneath her skin. Her consciousness expanded, suddenly encompassing not just her own experiences, but the collective memory of her people, their art, their music, their way of seeing the universe as an interconnected whole. And their terror, their bewilderment at this unprovoked attack, their desperate plea for help. The star heart pulsed once, twice, then released a beam of energy so concentrated it punched through the planet's crust, through the atmosphere, and into the void beyond. The message contained no language, no specific data, only pure emotional content. We are dying. We have done nothing wrong. Please, anyone, help us. As the beam faded, Arella collapsed. Her skin, once vibrant with color, had gone translucent, showing the faint outline of her bones beneath. The star heart had taken much from her, but she had given it willingly. Will anyone hear? She whispered. Elder Malon helped her to her feet as the chamber shook from impacts above. We can only hope. The message raced outward from Nylar Prime, at velocities that defied conventional physics, the crystalline matrix having bent space-time itself to send its desperate plea. It passed inhabited systems where species received fragments of the emotional content, but lacked the means to respond. It skimmed the edges of nebulae and pulsed through asteroid fields, always moving, always searching. Then, by cosmic coincidence, or perhaps by design of forces greater than any mortal understanding, the signal encountered a quantum anomaly, a fold in space-time left behind by the collapse of a neutron star millennia ago. The anomaly caught the signal, twisted it, and flung it along a new vector, accelerating it beyond its already impossible speed. It traveled to a part of the galaxy most species avoided, a region marked unexplored on official charts, but whispered about in spacer bars and diplomatic backchannels. A region dominated by a single yellow star and the third planet in its system, a planet that had gone silent nearly 2 centuries ago after a brief, terrifying period of expansion that had frightened even the oldest spacefaring races. Earth. Deep beneath the ice sheets of Antarctica, in a facility unknown to the majority of Earth's population, a console that hadn't activated in 150 years suddenly came to life. Red warnings flashed across screens as the Starheart's message bombarded sensors designed to detect any and all forms of communication. Commander Aisha Chen, head of Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Initiative, was woken from cryosleep by the automated systems. She hadn't expected to see consciousness again for another 50 years at minimum. Her watch shift was supposed to be routine, uneventful. Report, she demanded, her voice rough from disuse, as technicians and fellow officers were similarly revived around her. "Unknown signal type, sir," said Lieutenant Kamal, still wiping cryofluid from his eyes as he studied the readings. "Not matching any known communication protocol. It's, sir, the quantum analyzers are saying it contains emotional content." "Emotional content?" Chen frowned. "Clarify. The signal isn't just data. It's feelings, consciousness fragments. Our systems are interpreting it as a distress call of unprecedented urgency." Chen moved to the central display where the signal was being visualized, not as code or language, but as patterns of light and color that somehow conveyed meaning directly to the brain of the observer. She felt it immediately: terror, desperation, innocence under attack. Location: Nylar system, approximately 8,700 light-years from Earth. Chen's expression hardened. The Nylar system was far beyond the edge of what humans had once called their sphere of influence, before the Great Withdrawal, when humanity had discovered what the galaxy truly thought of them, feared them for their resilience, their adaptability, their evolution on a planet that should have killed them 1,000 times over. They had retreated, turned inward, built their defenses, and waited. "Get me the War Council," Chen ordered. Priority Omega. In bunkers buried beneath each continent, the 7 members of Earth's War Council were awakened from their own cryosleep. Men and women chosen not for political acumen, but for strategic brilliance, ethical grounding, and unflinching decisiveness. Within an hour, they were connected via quantum entanglement comms, their haggard faces appearing on screens around Chen's command center. "This had better be extinction level," growled General Omar Santos, the South American representative. "See for yourself," Chen replied, transmitting the signal. The council members fell silent as the emotional content of the message washed over them. Even through the clinical interface of the quantum network, the desperation was palpable. "We withdrew from galactic affairs," said Councillor Yin of the Asian Coalition, her face grave. "We swore not to interfere unless directly threatened." "Their innocence," said Councillor O'Keefe of the African Union. "Complete non-combatants from their emotional signature. This isn't a war we're being dragged into. It's a slaughter we're being asked to stop." Debate erupted among the council members. Earth's policy of isolation had served humanity well. They had been feared, misunderstood by a galaxy that saw them as dangerous aberrations. Deathworlders, evolved on a planet so hazardous that every aspect of human biology had been shaped by constant survival pressure. When the truth became clear that most galactic species had evolved on paradise worlds with no predators, no natural disasters, no atmospheric fluctuations, humanity had understood their fear. And rather than force their presence on a galaxy that trembled at their approach, they had withdrawn, leaving behind only automated warning beacons at the edge of their solar system. "We wish to be left alone. Respect this wish." For over a century, it had worked. Humanity had turned its innovative drive inward, building wonders on the transformed Mars, the cloud cities of Venus, the orbital habitats that housed billions. The Treaty of Withdrawal contains exception clauses. Admiral Helena Voss of the European Federation said quietly when the debate had circled for the 10th time. Section 7, Paragraph 12. In the event of unprovoked genocide against sapient non-combatants, Earth reserves the right to intervene. Silence fell again as the council members considered this rarely discussed clause. "A full vote," Santos demanded. "This isn't a decision to be made lightly." One by one, the council members registered their positions. The result was unanimous. Earth would answer the call. "Activate the Sword of Damocles," ordered Chen, a tremor in her voice despite her military discipline. The sword was humanity's hidden fleet, ships of war built during the height of their expansionist period, then hidden away in the shadow of Pluto's orbit when they withdrew from galactic affairs. All across Earth, Mars, and the orbital habitats, civilians watched in confusion as dormant military systems hummed to life. Massive factories that had been repurposed for civilian use reverted to their original programming. Warriors who had been living as teachers, artists, and engineers received the call they never truly expected. Humanity had been slumbering, but it had never forgotten how to fight. In the shadow of Pluto, where no alien sensors ever ventured, 500 warships stirred from their century-long dormancy. Each was a masterpiece of human engineering. Vessels designed not for exploration or diplomacy, but for the brutal calculus of warfare. At their center was the HSS Retribution, a dreadnought 17 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could crack planets. Captain Ileana Reyes stood on the bridge of the Retribution as systems came online around her, watching as her crew, the best of Earth's military forces, took their stations with practiced efficiency. "The Nylari distress signal is already 2 days old," she told them, her voice carrying across the massive bridge. "Given the severity of their situation, we must assume the worst. This is not a rescue mission. This is retribution." The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Not revenge. Retribution. Justice delivered with overwhelming force. "Battle Group Nemesis will enter FTL in 30 minutes," she continued. "Our target is the Nylar system. Our mission is to eliminate the hostile force attacking the Nylari civilization and to render all possible aid to survivors." Wrath of the Forgotten. By the 6th day of the invasion, Nylar Prime was almost unrecognizable. The crystal spires that had defined the skyline for millennia were now jagged ruins, their once pristine surfaces blackened and cracked. Smoke hung heavy in the air, turning the once vibrant atmosphere into a toxic haze that stunned the eyes and choked the lungs of the few Nylari still fighting to survive. Arella, her formerly luminescent skin now dull and gray from the Starheart's train, huddled with the last 300 survivors of the central city in the ancient catacombs beneath the planetary archives. Their hiding place had remained secure only because it had been forgotten. Tunnels dating back to before the Great Harmony, when Nylari had still built with defense in mind. "Water reserves are at 12%, Tyrion reported, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Air filtration is failing. We have perhaps 2 days before we join the rest of our people," Elder Malon finished, too exhausted for euphemism. Of the 17 council elders, only he remained alive. Arella said nothing. She had spent every waking moment since sending the Starheart message listening for a response, any response. But the communication devices they'd salvaged could detect only silence from beyond their world. Either their plea had gone unheard, or those who heard it didn't care enough to come. Above them, they could feel the vibrations as the invaders' heavy machinery continued to strip their world. From what their scouts had reported, the attackers were methodically harvesting something from the planet's crust, boring massive holes through the surface and extracting crystalline formations that seemed to be their primary objective. "They're not even trying to capture us anymore," said Tyrion, slumping against the wall. "At first, they took prisoners, ran experiments. Now they just kill on sight, like we're pests interfering with their work." Arella closed her eyes, fighting back despair. The Nylari had always defined themselves by their connection to each other, to their world, to the greater harmony of existence. To die this way, huddled in darkness, disconnected from the moons and stars they had sung to for generations, seemed a final cruelty. A child approached Arella, her skin barely glowing with the faintest blue light, all the energy the little one could muster in their desperate situation. "Communicator Arella," the child whispered, "will you tell us the story of the first song? One last time." Arella looked around at the faces turned toward her, faces exhausted, terrified, but still holding on to the last threads of their cultural identity. Even facing extinction, they sought connection through their stories, their shared heritage. "Of course," Arella said, gathering her strength, as she began the ancient tale of how the Nylari had first learned to communicate through light and color. She didn't notice the faint tremor that ran through the catacombs, nor the second, stronger vibration that followed it. But the third, a rumble so deep it seemed to shake the planet's foundation. That, everyone felt. They found us, someone whispered, panic rising in their voice. Tyrion rushed to the makeshift sensor array they'd assembled. No, this is different. It's coming from above the atmosphere. Far above Nylar Prime, in the cold void of space, reality itself seemed to tear open. The fabric of space-time folded and warped as the laws of physics temporarily yielded to human engineering. 500 points of distortion appeared simultaneously around the planet, each blossoming into existence with a flash of gravitational energy that sent ripples across the system. The HSS Retribution emerged first, its massive hull bristling with weapons primed and ready. Behind it came the rest of Battle Group Nemesis. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and specialized combat vessels, each designed for a specific role in humanity's approach to warfare. On the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Rise surveyed the tactical display with cold fury. The enemy fleet, 47 ships of varying sizes, hovered in orbit, industrial vessels interspersed with military craft. They had no unified design philosophy, suggesting a coalition force rather than a single species, and they had clearly not expected company. No detection evasion measures, noted Commander Khalid, her tactical officer. No screening formations. They're completely exposed. They didn't need to hide, Rise replied, her voice tightly controlled. Until now. The sensors painted a grim picture of the planet below. Widespread destruction, massive mining operations, atmospheric pollution, and radiation signatures consistent with high-yield plasma weapons. Population centers had been systematically targeted, with an estimated 99.7% reduction in life signs compared to historical records. It was genocide, plain and simple. Methodical extinction of a species whose only crime had been evolving without the means to defend themselves. All ships, battle formations, Rise ordered, her words broadcast across the entire fleet. Weapons free. No quarter. There was no ultimatum, no demand for surrender, no warning shot. Humanity had learned long ago that some actions forfeited the right to such courtesies. The first salvo from the human fleet wasn't designed to disable or deter. It was designed to annihilate. Kinetic kill vehicles, solid tungsten rods accelerated to relativistic speeds, struck 7 of the largest enemy ships simultaneously. There was no explosion, no dramatic burst of flame, just the simple physics of objects moving at phenomenal velocity. The enemy vessels didn't break apart so much as cease to exist, converted into expanding clouds of superheated plasma and debris. The remaining enemy ships reacted with surprise but not panic. They began to maneuver, shields flaring to life, weapons powering up. A professional military response that spoke of experience and training. It wasn't enough. The second wave of the human attack deployed electromagnetic pulse weapons across a spectrum the enemy had clearly never encountered. Shields designed to repel physical and energy attacks did nothing against the precisely calibrated EMP bursts. Ship after ship went dark, their propulsion and weapons systems failing simultaneously. Enemy craft attempting to flee, reported Commander Khalid. 11 vessels breaking orbit, accelerating toward the system's edge. Activate the Ouroboros protocol, Rise ordered. Microsecons before Battle Group Nemesis had arrived, specialized scout ships had deployed quantum entanglement mines at strategic points throughout the system. As the enemy ships fled, these mines activated, creating localized pockets of distorted space-time that trapped the fleeing vessels in bubbles of warped reality. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 15 minutes. When it ended, 39 enemy ships had been destroyed outright, while the remaining 8 drifted powerless, trapped by technology they couldn't comprehend. Boarding teams to the disabled vessels, Rise commanded. I want prisoners, data, and answers. As Marines in advanced combat armor prepared to board the enemy ships, Rise turned her attention to the planet below. The Retribution sensors had identified a few scattered pockets of Nylari survivors, hiding in underground structures that had shielded them from the invaders' detection methods. Prepare humanitarian teams, she ordered. Medical, engineering, and security detachments. We need to make contact with the survivors and begin emergency aid. In the catacombs beneath the ruins of the central spire, the Nylari huddled in terrified silence as new tremors shook their sanctuary. These weren't the heavy, methodical vibrations of the invaders' mining equipment, but sharp, precise impacts that seemed to be growing closer. "Something's coming," Tyrion whispered, the emergency scanner in his hand showing multiple signals approaching their position. Elder Malon moved to stand in front of the children, his frail body straightening with the last of his dignity. "Whatever happens," he told the gathered survivors, "remember that we are Nylari. We lived in beauty, and we die with honor." The vibrations stopped. In the silence that followed, they heard a sound they hadn't expected. A precise, controlled series of taps against the ancient stone door that sealed the catacombs. Not the blunt force of the invaders, but something that almost seemed like a code, a request for entry. Before anyone could decide how to respond, the locking mechanism on the door, jammed for 1,000 years before they'd forced it closed behind them, began to move on its own. The massive stone slab slid aside with surprising gentleness. Light flooded the chamber, temporarily blinding the Nylari who had spent days in near darkness. As their vision adjusted, they found themselves staring at figures unlike any they had seen before. The beings were Bikdal, like the invaders, but that was where the similarity ended. They wore armor, yes, but it was sleek, functional rather than intimidating. Their helmets were partially transparent, showing faces within. Faces that looked back at the Nylari not with cold indifference, but with something that, despite the differences in physiology, was recognizably compassion. "We are from Earth," said the foremost figure in the Nylari language. The words clearly produced by translation technology, but delivered with careful precision. "We received your distress call. The enemy has been neutralized. We're here to help." The human speaker removed her helmet, revealing dark skin, close-cropped hair, and eyes that held both strength and sorrow. "I am Dr. Imani Okafor, Chief Medical Officer of the HSS Retribution." For a moment, the Nylari could only stare in shocked silence. Then Orella stepped forward, her depleted body trembling with emotion. "You came," she said simply, her voice breaking. "We called, and you came." "Yes," Dr. Okafor replied, her expression solemn. "We came as quickly as we could. I'm only sorry we weren't faster." Behind her, more humans entered the catacombs, bringing supplies, medical equipment, and portable environmental systems to immediately improve conditions. They moved with practiced efficiency but showed remarkable gentleness when approaching the traumatized Nylari. "How?" Elder Malon asked, his scientific curiosity briefly overcoming his exhaustion. "How did you receive our message? How did you understand it? How did you travel here so quickly?" Captain Reyes, who had joined the ground team after securing the orbital perimeter, stepped forward. "Your Starheart message reached one of our deep space monitoring stations through an anomalous space fold," she explained. "As for understanding it, your emotional content was clear enough, even across species barriers. The details came from our historical archives. We've been aware of your civilization for some time." The captain's slight hesitation wasn't lost on Orella. "You knew of us, but we didn't know of you," she said. "Why?" "It's complicated," Reyes admitted. "Humanity withdrew from galactic affairs over a century ago. We aren't like most spacefaring species. Our homeworld shaped us differently." As the humans continued their rescue operations, transferring the weakest Nylari to medical facilities aboard shuttles, Captain Reyes explained Earth's history to the Nylari leadership. She told them of humanity's evolution on a planet that tried to kill them daily, with predators, diseases, natural disasters, and climate extremes that would have eradicated most galactic species in a single generation. She explained how this crucible had created a species that other galactic powers found disturbing. Too aggressive, too adaptable, too willing to fight when threatened. When humanity had realized how they were perceived, they had made the difficult decision to withdraw, rather than force their presence on a galaxy that feared them. We never stopped watching, though, Reyes concluded. Never stopped listening. Your message reached us because we never abandoned our responsibility to this galaxy, even if we no longer walked openly within it. While this conversation unfolded, human intelligence teams on the captured enemy vessels made a disturbing discovery. The invaders called themselves the Harvester Consortium, a collection of 11 species united by a single commercial purpose: the extraction of rare resources from vulnerable worlds. They specifically target pre-military or pacifist civilizations, reported Commander Khalid, joining the planetary team via hologram. They've done this 17 times before, always following the same pattern: complete genocide to eliminate witnesses, resource extraction until the planet is depleted, then they move on. The data recovered showed that the Nilari had been targeted for the unique crystalline formations in their planet's crust. Formations that the Nilari had built their civilization around, never realizing their value to less enlightened species. The worst part, Khalid continued, her disgust evident, is that they're legally incorporated in the Galactic Assembly. They'd bribe officials to look the other way, target worlds without powerful allies, and operate with complete impunity. Elder Malin's skin, which had begun to regain some color with medical treatment, flashed dark with anger. The Assembly knew. All this time, as we sent our ambassadors, shared our knowledge, they knew such evil existed in their midst. Not all of them, Rice clarified, but enough. Enough to enable this. In the days that followed, as human medical technology worked miracles to save Nilari who would otherwise have died, and as engineering teams began the monumental task of environmental restoration, a decision had to be made. The captured harvesters were unanimous in their arrogance. They believed the attack force sent against them was the entirety of Earth's military capability, significant but not overwhelming in the context of galactic powers. They expected their corporate backers in the Assembly to negotiate their release, pay reparations, and allow business to continue as usual. They were mistaken. 7 days after the liberation of Nylar Prime, representatives from every major power in the Galactic Assembly received the same message: a simple data package containing irrefutable evidence of the Harvester Consortium's crimes, along with proof of complicity from 32 high-ranking Assembly officials. Accompanying this evidence was something that sent shockwaves through the political establishments of 1,000 worlds: footage of the human fleet in action, demonstrating military technology centuries beyond what the Assembly had believed possible. The message ended with a statement delivered by Captain Rice herself. For too long, humanity has watched from the shadows as injustice flourished in a galaxy that rejected us for being what our world made us: survivors, protectors, warriors when necessary. We withdrew out of respect for your fear, not because we shared your assessment of our nature. Today, that changes. The genocide of the Nilari people will not go unanswered. The Harvester Consortium will be dismantled. Those who enabled them will face justice, and any civilization that preys upon the defenseless will answer to Earth. We do not seek empire. We do not want your territory or resources, but we will no longer stand aside while the innocent suffer. This is not a negotiation or a threat. It is simply how things will be from now on. The recording ended, leaving the Assembly in chaos as power structures that had stood for millennia began to crumble under the weight of exposed corruption and the sudden reemergence of a species they had hoped to forget. On Nylar Prime, as the first new crystal spire began to take shape from the ruins of the old, Arella stood with Captain Rice, watching Nilari and human engineers working side by side. "Will you stay?" Arella asked, her skin now glowing with a cautious hope that had seemed impossible just days before. "Not all of us," Rice replied, "but enough. Enough to help you rebuild, to establish defenses, to ensure this never happens again." Arella was silent for a moment, contemplating the strange twist of fate that had connected their peoples. "They called you Deathworlders," she said finally. as if it were something to be ashamed of. But I think perhaps the galaxy needed what your world taught you. Rise looked out over the reconstruction efforts, where human strength and determination worked alongside Nylari creativity and vision to create something neither could have built alone. Perhaps, she agreed, it's time the galaxy learned that being forged in fire doesn't mean you're destined to burn everything you touch. Sometimes it means you're the only ones who know how to fight the flames. Across the galaxy, as news spread of Earth's return and the swift justice delivered to the harvesters, reactions varied from panic to relief. But on 100 worlds where vulnerable civilizations had lived in fear of becoming the next target, there was something else, something that had been in short supply. Hope, because the Deathworlders had returned. And this time, they had come not as conquerors but as guardians, not seeking to rule the galaxy, but to remind it of something it had forgotten in its comfortable existence. That true strength isn't measured by the ability to destroy. It's measured by the willingness to protect.